Imagine a city that stood at the center of the world, a city where merchants arrived from China, India, Africa, and Europe, a city whose libraries contained hundreds of thousands of books, a city where scholars studied medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy centuries ahead of their time. For more than 500 years, Baghdad was one of the greatest cities on earth. Its wealth was legendary, its knowledge unmatched. Its influence reached across continents. But in the year 1258, everything changed. An army appeared on the horizon. Not an ordinary army, an army that had already conquered kingdoms, destroyed cities, and terrified nations across Asia. The Mongols were coming. Within weeks, Baghdad would face its greatest disaster. Its walls would be breached, its libraries destroyed, its people overwhelmed. One of the most remarkable centers of learning in human history would fall, and the Islamic Golden Age would suffer one of its darkest moments. This is the story of the fall of Baghdad. Long before the Mongols appeared at its gates, Baghdad was one of the most extraordinary cities in the world. Founded in the year 762 by the Abbasid Caliph al-Mansur, the city was carefully planned and strategically positioned along the banks of the Tigris River. Over time, it grew into the political, economic, and intellectual heart of the Islamic world. Travelers who arrived in Baghdad often struggled to describe its scale and beauty. The city was filled with bustling markets, grand mosques, elegant gardens, and magnificent palaces. Merchants arrived from every direction. Caravans carried silk from China. Spices arrived from India. Gold and ivory came from Africa. The city's markets connected distant civilizations through trade. But Baghdad's true wealth was not measured in gold or silver. Its greatest treasure was knowledge. For centuries, scholars from different backgrounds gathered within the city. Arabs, Persians, Turks, and many others exchanged ideas and worked together. This spirit of learning helped transform Baghdad into one of history's greatest centers of scholarship. At the heart of this intellectual world stood the famous House of Wisdom. Known in Arabic as Bayt al-Hikmah, it became a symbol of scientific and cultural achievement. Within its walls, scholars translated ancient works from Greek, Persian, and Sanskrit into Arabic. These translations preserved knowledge that might otherwise have been lost forever. But they did more than preserve knowledge. They expanded it. Astronomers carefully observed the night sky. Mathematicians developed new methods of calculation. Physicians wrote medical texts that would be studied for centuries. Geographers mapped lands far beyond the borders of the Abbasid Empire. The influence of Baghdad reached across continents. Students traveled great distances to study there. Books copied in Baghdad found their way into libraries throughout the Islamic world. The city became known as a beacon of learning and innovation. While wars and conflicts affected many regions of the medieval world, Baghdad continued to thrive. Its scholars pushed the boundaries of human knowledge. Its markets generated immense wealth. Its rulers governed one of the most influential empires of the age. To many people, Baghdad seemed unstoppable. Few could imagine that such a powerful and respected city might one day face destruction. Yet far beyond the city's walls, events were unfolding that would change its destiny forever. A new power was rising in the east, and that power was the Mongol Empire. While Baghdad flourished as a center of learning and culture, a very different world existed far to the east. Beyond the mountains, deserts, and great cities of Asia stretched the vast grasslands of Mongolia. For generations, nomadic tribes lived across these open steppes. Life there was harsh and demanding. Food could be scarce. Winters were brutal. Survival required strength, discipline, and adaptability. From a young age, boys learned to ride horses, hunt animals, and defend their families. The horse became an extension of the warrior. Speed, endurance, and mobility defined life on the steppe. For centuries, the tribes of Mongolia fought one another. Alliances formed and collapsed. Rival clans competed for land, resources, and influence. Few people could have predicted that these divided tribes would one day build the largest contiguous empire in history. Everything began to change with the rise of a man named Temujin. Born into a difficult and uncertain world, Temujin faced hardship from an early age. His family struggled to survive. He experienced betrayal, conflict, and loss. Yet through determination and remarkable leadership, he slowly gained followers. Over time, Temujin united tribes that had once been bitter enemies. In 1206, he was given a new title, Genghis Khan, the ruler of all Mongols. Under his leadership, the Mongol army became one of the most effective military forces the world had ever seen. Discipline was strict. Commanders were chosen for ability rather than noble birth. Communication was fast and efficient. Every warrior understood his role. The Mongols mastered mobility in a way few armies could match. Their horsemen could travel astonishing distances in a short period of time. They struck quickly, retreated suddenly, and often returned before their enemies could react. Military intelligence became one of their greatest strengths. Scouts gathered information about terrain, defenses, and enemy movements long before major campaigns began. This allowed Mongol commanders to plan with remarkable precision. As the empire expanded, kingdom after kingdom fell before it. Northern China, Central Asia, Persia. Large regions that had once seemed secure suddenly found themselves facing a new and terrifying enemy. Stories spread across Asia, stories of cities destroyed, armies defeated, and rulers forced to submit. Fear often traveled faster than the Mongol cavalry itself. By the time Genghis Khan died in 1227, his empire already stretched across enormous territories. Yet the expansion did not stop. His successors continued the conquests. The Mongol Empire grew even larger. Among the next generation of leaders was Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, an ambitious commander entrusted with a critical mission. He was ordered to expand Mongol authority deeper into the Middle East. One by one, powerful strongholds fell before his armies. Each victory brought him closer to the heart of the Islamic world, and eventually his attention turned toward a city unlike any other. Baghdad, the jewel of the Abbasid Caliphate, a city renowned for its wealth, learning, and influence. Soon the paths of Baghdad and the Mongol Empire would collide, and the consequences would change history forever. By the middle of the 13th century, the Mongol Empire had become the dominant military power in much of the known world. From East Asia to the Middle East, rulers watched its expansion with growing concern. Entire kingdoms had fallen before Mongol armies. Cities once considered impregnable had been conquered. Many leaders chose submission rather than risk destruction. Now Hulagu Khan turned his attention toward Baghdad. For centuries, Baghdad had stood as the symbolic center of the Abbasid Caliphate. Although the empire no longer controlled all the lands it once had, the city still held enormous prestige. Its name was known from Spain to India. Its caliph remained one of the most respected figures in the Islamic world. Yet prestige alone could not stop an invading army. As Hulagu prepared his campaign, he sent a message to Caliph al-Mustasim. The message carried a clear demand. Submit to Mongol authority, open the gates, recognize Mongol supremacy, and avoid destruction. It was the same choice many rulers had already faced. Some had submitted and survived. Others had resisted and paid a terrible price. The arrival of the Mongol ultimatum created deep anxiety within Baghdad. Merchants discussed the rumors in crowded markets. Officials debated possible responses. Advisors offered conflicting opinions. Some believed compromise was the only realistic option. Others argued that Baghdad's walls could withstand any siege. There were also those who believed the city's religious significance would protect it from catastrophe. The Caliph faced an extraordinarily difficult decision. Unfortunately, Baghdad was not in the strong position many imagined. The military forces available to defend the city were limited. Political divisions weakened the government's ability to respond effectively. Potential allies were either too distant, too weak, or unwilling to confront the Mongols directly. Meanwhile, Hulagu continued his preparations. His army was not merely a force of horsemen. It included engineers, siege specialists, and experienced commanders who had spent years conquering fortified cities. Every stage of the campaign was carefully planned. Every movement was deliberate. As the Mongol army advanced westward, reports of its progress reached Baghdad. The threat was no longer distant. It was approaching rapidly. Still, no great alliance appeared. No massive relief force marched toward the city. Baghdad increasingly found itself standing alone. Eventually, the final decision was made. The Caliph refused to fully submit to Mongol demands. The gates remained closed. For Hulagu Khan, the answer was clear. Negotiations were over. The time for war had arrived. One of the most important cities in the world was about to face the greatest challenge in its history. In January of 1258, the long-anticipated confrontation finally began. Hulagu Khan's army arrived outside the walls of Baghdad. For generations, the city had stood as a symbol of power, wealth, and learning. Now it faced the most dangerous enemy in its history. The Mongols moved with remarkable speed and discipline. Rather than launching an immediate assault, they first secured complete control of the surrounding area. Roads were blocked, supply routes were cut, communication with the outside world became increasingly difficult. Baghdad was being isolated. Day by day, the circle around the city tightened. From the walls, defenders could see Mongol camps stretching across the landscape. Thousands of soldiers occupied strategic positions. Banners waved above endless rows of tents. The scale of the invading force was impossible to ignore. Soon, the next stage of the campaign began. Engineers started constructing powerful siege machines, trebuchets, catapults, and other specialized weapons designed to break defensive fortifications. The Mongols had learned from previous campaigns. They understood that even strong walls could eventually be destroyed through patience and relentless pressure. Before long, the bombardment began. Massive stones crashed into Baghdad's defenses. The sound echoed across the city. Each impact reminded the population that the danger was growing closer. Dust filled the air. Fragments of stone scattered across defensive positions. Repair crews worked continuously to strengthen damaged sections of the walls. But the attacks did not stop. Day after day, the bombardment continued. The defenders fought back as best they could. Archers lined the walls. Soldiers monitored vulnerable positions. Commanders attempted to organize resistance. Yet the Mongols maintained the initiative. They controlled the pace of the siege. Outside the city, several attempts were made to challenge the invading forces. These efforts ended badly. Mongol military experience and numerical strength proved difficult to overcome. Losses mounted. Morale began to suffer. Inside Baghdad, anxiety spread rapidly. Rumors circulated through crowded streets. Families worried about the future. Merchants watched supplies diminish. Food prices increased. The confidence that had once defined the city slowly began to fade. For many citizens, a troubling realization emerged. No major rescue force was coming. No powerful coalition was marching toward Baghdad. The city would have to face the Mongols alone. Meanwhile, Hulagu's commanders carefully studied the defenses. They searched for weaknesses. They concentrated attacks against vulnerable sectors. Every successful strike brought them closer to a breakthrough. Eventually, the damage became impossible to hide. Sections of the city's defenses began to fail. Cracks widened. Protective positions collapsed. The walls that had guarded Baghdad for generations could no longer guarantee safety. Then came the decisive moment. Breaches opened in the defenses. Mongol forces surged forward. Warriors poured through the damaged sections of the wall. Fighting erupted near the entrances to the city. The defenders resisted fiercely, but the balance of power had already shifted. The Mongols were inside Baghdad. After centuries as the center of the Abbasid world, the city had been breached. Its fate was now hanging by a thread, and the darkest chapter was about to begin. With Baghdad defeated, a tragedy unfolded that would echo through history for centuries. The fall of the city was not simply a military defeat. For many people, it represented the destruction of one of the world's greatest centers of knowledge and learning. For generations, Baghdad had attracted scholars, scientists, physicians, mathematicians, philosophers, and translators. People traveled great distances to study, teach, and exchange ideas. Knowledge flowed through the city just as surely as the waters of the Tigris River. At the center of this intellectual world stood the famous House of Wisdom. Known as Bayt al-Hikmah, it had become one of the most celebrated institutions of the Islamic Golden Age. Within its halls, scholars collected manuscripts from many civilizations, Greek works, Persian texts, Indian scientific writings, and countless contributions produced by Muslim scholars themselves. The House of Wisdom represented more than a library. It represented humanity's effort to preserve and expand knowledge. Here, ideas were translated, debated, improved, and shared. Generations of scholars built upon the work of those who came before them. As Baghdad fell, this world faced catastrophe. Many libraries, archives, and private collections suffered severe damage. Countless manuscripts disappeared. Some were destroyed during the violence. Others were lost in the chaos that followed. The exact scale of the destruction remains a subject of historical debate. Medieval chroniclers often described events in dramatic language. As a result, historians continue to discuss which accounts are literal and which may contain exaggeration. Yet there is little doubt that an enormous cultural loss occurred. Among the most famous stories connected to the fall of Baghdad is the tale of the Tigris River. According to later accounts, so many books were thrown into the river that the water turned dark from their ink. Whether this happened exactly as described remains uncertain. Many modern historians treat the story cautiously, but its symbolism is powerful. The image captures the sense of devastation felt by those who witnessed the destruction. For scholars living in Baghdad, the loss was deeply personal. Years of work vanished. Collections assembled over generations disappeared. Knowledge that had survived wars, political upheaval, and the passage of centuries suddenly became vulnerable. The destruction of books carried a meaning far beyond the loss of paper and ink. Every manuscript represented ideas, observations, discoveries, questions asked by people who sought to better understand the world around them. When such works disappear, a part of human history disappears with them. Yet even in the midst of tragedy, the story did not end completely. Long before 1258, copies of important texts had already spread across the Islamic world. Many manuscripts existed in multiple locations. Scholars in Cairo, Damascus, and other cities continued preserving and studying valuable works. Some knowledge survived because it had already traveled beyond Baghdad. Others survived because dedicated scholars protected what they could. This fact offers an important reminder. Ideas are often more resilient than buildings. Libraries can be destroyed, cities can fall, empires can disappear. But knowledge has a remarkable ability to endure. Even after one of the greatest disasters in medieval history, the intellectual legacy of Baghdad continued to influence future generations. Still, for those who stood among the ruins in 1258, the future was impossible to see. All around them lay silence, destruction, and loss. The greatest city of the Islamic world had fallen, and an era was coming to an end. The fall of Baghdad in 1258 marked the end of an era. For many people living at the time, it must have seemed as though an entire world had collapsed. The Abbasid Caliphate, which had once stood at the center of Islamic civilization, had suffered a devastating blow. A city celebrated for its wealth, scholarship, and influence now lay in ruins. Yet history rarely ends in a single moment. The destruction of Baghdad was profound, but it was not the end of knowledge. Nor was it the end of the intellectual traditions that had flourished there for centuries. Long before the Mongol conquest, ideas developed in Baghdad had already traveled far beyond the city's walls. Books had been copied, students had carried knowledge to distant lands, scholars had shared discoveries across vast networks connecting the Islamic world. Because of this, many achievements of the Islamic Golden Age survived. Mathematics continued to advance. Medical knowledge continued to spread. Astronomical observations remained valuable to future generations. Philosophical and scientific works continued to be studied, discussed, and expanded. The influence of Baghdad reached places far removed from the city itself. Centuries later, some of these ideas would help shape intellectual developments in Europe. Knowledge preserved, translated, and expanded by Muslim scholars became part of a much larger human story. The legacy of Baghdad extended across cultures, languages, and generations. When historians study the Islamic Golden Age today, they often focus not only on what was achieved, but also on how it was achieved. Baghdad became great because it welcomed learning, because it encouraged scholarship, because it brought together ideas from different civilizations and allowed them to grow. The city's greatest strength was not its walls. It was not its armies. It was not its wealth. Its greatest strength was its commitment to knowledge. That lesson remains relevant even today. History shows that powerful empires can rise and fall. Great cities can flourish and then disappear. Political power is often temporary, but ideas can outlive the people who create them. Knowledge can survive wars. It can survive disasters. And sometimes it can survive even the collapse of entire civilizations. More than 700 years after the fall of Baghdad, the memory of the city continues to inspire historians, scholars, and students around the world. Its story reminds us of both the fragility and resilience of human achievement. The destruction of Baghdad was one of the great tragedies of medieval history, but the survival of its intellectual legacy is one of history's most remarkable stories of endurance. Perhaps that is why the story still matters today. Not simply because a great city fell, but because the ideas nurtured within that city refused to die. And in many ways, they still live on. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, consider subscribing for more untold stories from the Islamic world. Because history is filled with remarkable chapters that deserve to be remembered.